Have you ever found yourself in the thick of a heated argument, your heart pounding like a war drum, each word feeling like a sharpened blade, each sentence a desperate lunge in a verbal duel? You're carefully crafting your next comeback, determined to prove you're right, to land the decisive blow that silences your opponent. But they're doing the same. Neither of you truly listening, just waiting for an opening to strike, the air crackling with tension, egos clashing like swords in a battlefield of words. Then Friedrich Nietzsche steps into the fray, his presence calm amid the chaos. He doesn't pick a side, doesn't coach your next line. Instead, he leans in close and whispers something unsettling, almost chilling. You've already lost. What does he mean? You're fighting, defending your ground, holding your own. How could that be defeat? Nietzsche's answer cuts deeper than any argument. The moment you let yourself be dragged into this kind of battle, you've surrendered your power. True strength, he insists, isn't found in winning debates, outshouting your rival, or proving others wrong. It lies in something far more elusive, more profound: silence, restraint, and absolute control over yourself in the moment. So what is this hidden power, and why does silence often roar louder than words? Let's plunge into Nietzsche's philosophy to uncover the silent trick that grants real power, explore its roots in history and psychology, and learn how to wield it in a world drowning in noise, where reaction is king and reflection is rare. Most people equate power with dominance, out-talking your opponent, outsmarting them in a debate, or delivering the final word that leaves the room stunned, the crowd nodding in awe. It's the image of a loud, victorious conqueror, basking in the glory of a verbal knockout. Nietzsche, ever the contrarian, saw this as a mirage, a hollow illusion of strength. For him, power wasn't in the noise of words. It was in mastery, the ability to control yourself, your emotions, and the situation without being swayed by ego, provocation, or the need for validation. To understand this, let's start with a fundamental question. Why do we argue at all? If you've ever been locked in a verbal sparring match, you know how fast it escalates. Tempers flare, voices rise, and suddenly it's less about the point and more about winning, about asserting dominance. But have you ever paused, even for a moment, to ask why we get so caught up? Nietzsche would argue that most arguments aren't about truth. They're about deeper, messier, primal human impulses that reveal more about our weaknesses than our strengths. First, there's ego protection. When someone challenges your point, it doesn't just feel like they're attacking your idea. It feels like they're attacking you, your identity, your sense of self. Admitting you're wrong can feel like losing a piece of your soul, so you fight not for truth, but to defend who you are, to shield your pride from the sting of defeat. Second, there's the power struggle. Many debates aren't about facts or logic. They're about dominance, a primal game of one-upmanship. Who gets to speak last? Who controls the tone? Who forces the other to back down, to yield? It's a herd mentality dressed up as reason, a contest for control rather than understanding. Third, there's social validation. Some people argue not because they deeply believe their point, but because they want to look smart, confident, or strong to others. A performance for the crowd, a bid for applause from the sidelines. Nietzsche saw these behaviors as signs of weakness, not strength. The moment you let someone provoke you, the instant you react emotionally, you're no longer in charge. You've handed them the reins to your emotions, your actions, your state of mind. True power, he believed, lies in refusing to play that game, in standing above the fray, in choosing when to engage and when to let silence speak louder than any shout. Nietzsche's philosophy hinges on his concept of the will to power, a term often misunderstood as a call for brute force, aggression, or domination. It's nothing of the sort. The will to power is about imposing your will on reality, shaping the world, your circumstances, and even yourself through discipline, intent, and self-mastery. It's not about shouting louder, winning every fight, or crushing your opponents. It's about choosing your battles with surgical precision and controlling the outcome before the conflict even begins, often without a single word. This is where Nietzsche's ideal human, the Übermensch, enters the picture. The Übermensch isn't like the average person, reacting impulsively to every slight challenge or provocation, scrambling to prove themselves right to feel secure. They move through the world with calm, unshakable authority, deciding when to engage and when to stay silent. Their choice is deliberate, their presence a force that commands without demanding. For them, power isn't about talking, it's about commanding the entire dynamic, whether through a single, well-timed word that cuts through the noise or a deliberate pause that shifts the room's energy, leaving others grasping for footing. Imagine a tense boardroom meeting. One person is loud, aggressive, desperate to dominate the argument, their voice rising with every point, their gestures frantic. Another sits quietly, composed, listening intently, their face unreadable. They don't get sucked into the emotional back and forth, don't rise to the bait of provocation. When they finally speak, their words are sharp, purposeful, and cut through the chaos, redirecting the conversation entirely, the room turning to them as if drawn by gravity. Who holds the power? Nietzsche would say it's the one who stays in control, who refuses to be rattled, who wields restraint like a weapon. Strategic silence, he argued, is a force, one that unnerves opponents, disarms egos, and commands respect without a single shout, a power that reshapes the moment without needing to dominate it. Why is silence so potent, so transformative? Most people see silence as weakness, a sign you're out of ammo, too timid to fight, or simply have nothing to say. Nietzsche saw it as strength, a masterstroke, a psychological tool that reshapes the battlefield in your favor, turning the tables without a sound. When you stay silent, you force others to fill the void, often revealing more than they intend. Their insecurities, their overconfidence, their desperation to be heard. Silence creates tension, and tension makes people uncomfortable, giving you the upper hand as they squirm under the weight of their own words. It's not about staying quiet forever. It's about choosing your moments with surgical precision, like a sniper picking the perfect shot. A well-timed pause can make someone second-guess themselves, their confidence wavering as they wonder why you're not reacting. A restrained response can shift the tone, redirecting the conversation where you want it to go. A single, piercing sentence can reframe the entire debate, cutting through the noise like a blade through fog. The Übermensch doesn't just avoid arguments. They use silence to dictate the terms of engagement, to control the rhythm of the interaction, to bend the moment to their will. This isn't a new idea. History's greatest minds have wielded silence like a blade, dominating in realms of intellect, business, war, and beyond. Let's explore three figures who embodied Nietzsche's philosophy: Socrates, Steve Jobs, and Miyamoto Musashi, each a master of strategic restraint, each a living testament to the power of silence in their own arena. Socrates, the father of Western philosophy, redefined what it means to win an argument, turning the act of debate into an art form of quiet devastation. He never fought the way most people do: no yelling, no direct attacks, no desperate need to prove himself superior. Instead, he used the Socratic method, a technique so powerful it still shapes how we think, argue, and teach today. Picture a smug Athenian politician boasting that he's the wisest man in the city, his chest puffed with pride, his words dripping with self-assurance. Most would challenge him head-on, listing reasons he's wrong, attacking his claims with facts or insults. Not Socrates. He'd ask, "What is wisdom?" The politician, eager to flex his intellect, would offer a definition, confident in his answer. Socrates would nod, pause, and ask, "But what does that mean?" Then another question, and another, each one gently peeling back the man's confidence, exposing the cracks in his logic. By the end, the politician would stumble, his contradictions laid bare, realizing he didn't understand wisdom at all, his once proud claims crumbling under the weight of his own words. Socrates didn't need to say, "You're wrong." He let his opponent unravel themselves, their ego defeated by their own admissions. His silence, those pauses between questions, wasn't passive. It was a weapon, a deliberate space that forced others to confront their own ignorance, to see the gaps in their understanding. Socrates knew a timeless truth. People don't accept what you tell them. They believe what they discover themselves, what they are led to see through their own reasoning. By staying calm and curious, he controlled the conversation without raising his voice, embodying the essence of silent power, guiding others to their own defeat without ever needing to dominate, without ever needing to fire a shot. Now leap to the modern era with Steve Jobs, a visionary who wielded silence like a conductor's baton, orchestrating conflict to bend reality to his will. Jobs didn't shy away from arguments. He thrived in them, but not the way most do. At Apple, he was known for intense, sometimes brutal debates, but his power wasn't in out-talking everyone or winning every point. It was in controlling the larger narrative, in shaping the conversation to serve his vision. When his team pushed for physical buttons on the iPhone, insisting a full touchscreen was too risky, too untested, Jobs didn't dive into endless technical arguments or try to outshout them. He listened, let them voice their concerns, their doubts, their fears, and stayed quiet, letting the room exhaust itself, the engineer's arguments piling up like so much noise. Then with a single compelling insight, delivered with calm, unshakable conviction, he'd reframe the debate, painting a vision so vivid, so inevitable, that his team couldn't help but see it. A sleek, buttonless device that would redefine how humans interact with technology. By the end, they didn't just agree with the touchscreen. They believed it was their idea all along. Their doubts transformed into enthusiasm through Jobs' subtle guidance. Jobs' silence, those moments of restraint, those pauses where he let others talk, wasn't weakness. It created an aura of authority that made his words hit harder, like a single note ringing clear in a symphony of chaos. He didn't argue to prove he was right. He argued to inspire action, to pull people toward his goal, to make them partners in his vision. His principle was simple but profound. Don't waste energy on petty fights, but when something matters, when the stakes are high, when the future is on the line, guide the conversation with precision, using silence as much as speech to shape the outcome. Words are only powerful if they move people forward, if they transform doubt into belief, resistance into momentum. Anything else is just noise, a distraction from the real work of creation. Then there's Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary samurai who fought over 60 duels and never lost, a warrior whose brilliance transcended the blade. Musashi's genius wasn't just his skill with a sword, it was his mastery of the mind, his ability to win battles before they even began. In his famous duel against Sasaki Kojiro, a swordsman renowned for his deadly speed and precision, Musashi didn't charge in with brute force or rely on physical prowess alone. He played a psychological game, one that Nietzsche would have admired. He showed up hours late to the duel, letting Kojiro stew in frustration on the beach, the sun beating down, the waves crashing, Kojiro's anger building with every passing minute, his patience eroding, his focus fraying. By the time Musashi finally arrived, Kojiro's emotions had clouded his skill, his rage making him reckless, his precision dulled by the weight of his own frustration. Musashi struck with calm, calculated precision and won effortlessly, Kojiro's own emotions his undoing. Musashi's silence, those hours of absence, that deliberate delay wasn't cowardice. It was strategy, a masterstroke that turned his opponent's strength into weakness. He knew an emotional opponent is already defeated, their clarity lost in the fog of reaction. Musashi's life embodied Nietzsche's Übermensch. He didn't react to provocation. He controlled the reactions of others, turning their weaknesses into his advantage, their emotions into his weapon. His power lay in mastering the battlefield before the fight even began, proving that silence can be as deadly as any blade, as devastating as any blow, as commanding as any shout. What unites Socrates, Jobs, and Musashi, these titans of intellect, innovation, and war? They didn't squander energy on pointless arguments, on battles that served no purpose. They didn't react impulsively to provocation. They dictated the terms of engagement, choosing when to act and when to hold back. They understood that true power lies in influence, not noise, in shaping the moment rather than being shaped by it. Silence, when wielded deliberately, isn't just the absence of words. It's a tool, a weapon, a force that shapes perceptions, exposes vulnerabilities, and commands respect. Nietzsche's philosophy aligns perfectly with this. The Übermensch doesn't argue for ego, pride, or validation. They choose their battles, using silence or speech to bend the moment to their will, to impose their vision on reality. Modern psychology backs this up with striking clarity. Social psychologists find that the most powerful people in any group, whether a boardroom, a classroom, a social circle, or an online community, aren't the loudest talkers, but those who control the conversation's flow. They don't interrupt or overshare. They speak sparingly, making others lean in to hear them, their words carrying weight because they're rare, deliberate, precise. Behavioral research shows that calm, composed people are more persuasive than emotional ones, because humans equate composure with confidence, authority, and strength, qualities that draw others in, that signal leadership without needing to demand it. Neuroscientists have found that emotional reactions trigger the amygdala, the brain's fear and stress center, clouding judgment and weakening your position, while staying calm activates the prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational decision-making and control. Nietzsche's insight was centuries ahead. The one who masters their reactions masters the room, turning silence into a force that outshines any shout, any rant, any desperate bid for dominance. So why do we argue? Why do we feel the need to prove ourselves right, to fight back, to defend our ideas even when the argument is going nowhere? When the room is deaf to reason, when the thread is a spiral of rage? Most people think arguments are about truth, about finding clarity or resolving differences. Nietzsche would disagree. They're about power, but not the kind you want. The more you argue, the more you expose your insecurities, your emotional triggers, your need to be right, to be seen, to be validated. Every time you react impulsively, you're giving someone else control over your state of mind, letting them pull the strings of your emotions. Nietzsche's will to power is about reversing that dynamic, mastering yourself so completely that others fall under your influence without realizing it, their reactions bending to your calm, your clarity, your purpose. Let's unpack why arguments trap us, why they so often lead to defeat rather than victory. First, cognitive biases sabotage our ability to argue rationally. Confirmation bias makes us cherry-pick facts that support our views, ignoring or dismissing anything that doesn't fit, turning us into selective listeners, blind to truth. The backfire effect means we dig in harder when challenged, even if we're wrong, our ego doubling down to protect itself. The Dunning-Kruger effect has us overestimating our knowledge, especially when we know the least, our confidence inversely proportional to our competence. These biases turn arguments into echo chambers where no one listens, just waits for their turn to speak, to fire back, to win. Second, emotional triggers make arguments personal, visceral, raw. When someone disagrees with a core belief, say about politics, religion, values, or even a workplace strategy, it doesn't feel like they're challenging your idea. It feels like they're attacking you, your identity, your worth. That's why debates get heated fast, why voices rise, why faces flush, because we're not just defending a point, we're defending ourselves. Third, there's the need for validation, the hidden driver behind so many arguments. Many argue not to uncover truth, but to look good, to seem smart, strong, or righteous to others, to win the approval of the crowd, the likes of the algorithm, the nods of the room. It's a performance for the herd, a bid for status disguised as reason. Nietzsche's Übermensch sidesteps these traps entirely. They don't need external approval, don't crave the applause of the masses. They create their own truth, their own path, and let their actions, their presence, their choices speak louder than any words, any argument, any fleeting victory. But silence alone isn't the answer. Nietzsche wasn't preaching passivity, withdrawal, or a life of silent detachment. His will to power embraced conflict, but only when it served a purpose, when it advanced your will, your vision, your growth. The Übermensch doesn't avoid arguments out of fear or cowardice. They engage strategically, using conflict as a crucible to sharpen their mind, refine their ideas, or shape reality in their image. Think of Galileo, who challenged the church's geocentric dogma, knowing it could cost his freedom, his life. His arguments weren't about ego. They were about truth, about rewriting humanity's place in the cosmos, and they laid the foundation for modern science. Or Nietzsche himself, whose provocative writings were designed to jolt people out of mental complacency, to force them to question morality, power, and existence itself, even if it meant being dismissed as a madman in his time. These thinkers didn't argue for validation or pride. They argued for transformation, for progress, for a legacy that outlasted their critics. The key is knowing when to engage, when the argument hones your thinking, like a blade against a whetstone, forcing you to clarify your ideas and grow stronger. When it uncovers deeper truths, pushing you or others to move beyond surface-level beliefs. When it shifts power in your favor, aligning the situation with your vision or goals. When it's a necessary stand that serves a purpose greater than yourself. And when to stay silent, when it's just ego, when the other person is too entrenched to listen, when it's a distraction, or when silence itself is the stronger move, letting others unravel in their own uncertainty. Arguing without purpose is weakness. Arguing with precision, with intent, is power. Let's make this practical. How do you wield Nietzsche's silent trick in your own life, in the messy, noisy reality of today? First, master self-restraint. When provoked, whether it's a snarky comment, a direct challenge, or a heated debate, don't react on impulse. Pause, breathe, and assess. If someone can make you angry, they control you. Take that power back by staying calm, your mind a fortress against their provocation. Second, listen more than you speak. Let others talk themselves out, revealing their motives, insecurities, or weaknesses while you stay composed. Their words are a window into their mind. Use it to your advantage. Third, ask questions instead of arguing. Like Socrates, use curiosity as a weapon. Why do you think that? Or can you explain what you mean? Questions shift the burden onto them, exposing flaws without you needing to attack. Fourth, speak with purpose. Don't waste words on ego or defensiveness. Say what moves the conversation toward your goal, whether it's clarity, influence, or action, and say it sharply. Fifth, know when to walk away. Not every fight is worth your energy. Sometimes silence is the loudest response, leaving others to stew in their own uncertainty. Sixth, cultivate an aura of control. Calmness breeds authority. Let others scramble while you stay steady, your presence commanding respect. Seventh, embrace conflict when it matters. Don't shy away from necessary battles. Use them to refine your ideas or assert your vision, but choose them wisely. Eighth, focus on long-term impact. Power isn't about winning one argument. It's about shaping perceptions and outcomes over time, building a legacy of influence. This approach is grounded in science. Social psychologists find that the most influential people aren't the loudest. They're the ones who control the conversation's flow, speaking sparingly to maximize impact. Behavioral research shows calm people are more persuasive because composure signals confidence. Neuroscientists note that emotional reactions trigger the amygdala, clouding judgment, while calmness activates the prefrontal cortex, enhancing rational control. Nietzsche's insight was prophetic. Master your reactions, and you master the moment. Let's bring this to life with a scenario. You're in a heated discussion, maybe at work, where a colleague dismisses your proposal, or at a family dinner where a debate spirals into chaos. Your instinct is to fire back, to win. Stop. Ask, why am I arguing? Am I in control or am I reacting? Stay silent. Let them talk. They'll reveal their weaknesses. Ask a question. What makes you so sure? If you speak, make it count. A sharp point that redirects the conversation, or walk away, letting your silence linger. This isn't avoidance, it's mastery. Nietzsche's silent weapon is about redefining power, not as noise, but as control, not as reaction, but as choice. The Übermensch shapes reality through presence, not performance. Socrates, Jobs, Musashi, they didn't react. They ruled. You can too. If this resonates, share a time you chose silence over noise, or wish you had. Subscribe to Echoes of Truth for more insights from history's sharpest minds. Share this with anyone ready to rethink power. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.